I never thought I'd feel lonely in the very home I helped build. But that morning, as soft sunlight slipped through the curtains and lit up the steaming cup of mint tea on the table, I saw something no one ever wants to see in a marriage. The cold truth that I was being deliberately and systematically excluded. My name is Haley, I'm 32 years old and live in a quiet suburb near Santa Barbara, California. Mason Poole. My husband and I have been married for 4 years. When we first met, he was warm, funny, and a great listener. But what I didn't realize was that he had never truly broken free from his mother's grip. Vivian. At first, I thought my mother-in-law was just a little particular, someone who liked things her way. But over time, I saw she didn't want to share the spotlight in Mason's life, not even with his wife. I began to notice family dinners I wasn't invited to, holiday plans already made by the time I learned they were going. The excuses were always the same: you're busy, or Mom didn't want to bother you. Like I was some distant guest, not Mason's partner. That day, I found the email on Mason's laptop. He forgot to log out. The subject line read, "Cruise booking confirmation for 2 Bahamas." My heart sank. I stared at the words on the screen. Luxury suite, round-trip airfare, all-inclusive service. And the names? Mason and his mother. I wasn't on the list. Again. When Mason came home, I was already sitting at the dining table, laptop open to the email. He glanced at me, then the screen. No panic, no excuse, just a cold sigh. "Can you explain this?" I asked, my voice calm, surprisingly so. "Haley, you've never been into this kind of thing. You even said you don't like the beach." I stood up, my pulse pounding. "It's not about whether I like it, it's about why your wife wasn't even told about it." He shrugged. "Mom planned it a month ago. You've been busy with your research work. And you've been busy pretending I don't exist?" I saw irritation flicker in Mason's eyes. He didn't respond, he just turned away like the conversation had never started. That night, I lay alone in bed. The hallway light spilled through the door crack, casting a pale stripe across the silent room. I replayed every time I'd been accidentally left out. My birthday dinner. Everyone went out without me. Thanksgiving. I was encouraged to rest at home. Times when Vivian would show up unannounced, walking in like I was invisible. I used to think if I just tried a little harder, I'd be accepted. But now it was obvious I wasn't part of their family. I was the outsider at the door, only there to be reminded I didn't belong. I got up and walked to my desk. The warm light hit the corner of our wedding photo. I was glowing in white. Mason staring at me like I was his whole world. But front and center in the group photo? Vivian, cold eyes guarding her territory. I picked up my phone, hands trembling, and typed, "Cancel Bahamas trip." I answered the confirmation code and hit send. The screen flashed, "Cancellation successful." I exhaled deeply. For the first time in months, I felt like I'd done something right. I heard the front door open as the clock struck 6 p.m. Mason's footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor, each step pounding harder on my chest. I sat still at the table, the email glowing on the screen. He walked in, shirt still buttoned, leather briefcase dangling from one hand. He paused as the words on the monitor hit him. "Trip canceled." His eyes flickered, confusion flashing, then freezing into rage. "What did you just do, Haley?" His voice was low and sharp, like stone dropped on glass. I stood slowly, meeting his stare. "I canceled the trip. I'm not a decoration to be left out of every decision." He slammed his bag down. "You had no right." "I do when my husband books a getaway with his mom and leaves his wife out." He stepped closer. "You don't get how important Vivian is to me. She's been planning that trip for months. You canceled it just because you felt left out?" "It's not a feeling," I whispered. "It's the truth." Before I could finish, his hand came down. A loud, flat crack. The world tilted, my shoulder hit the icy floor, everything blurred. His voice rang in my ears. "You have no idea what you just ruined." When I came to, the kitchen was dark. My cheek burned, my lip was bleeding, and my head throbbed. I crawled up, gripping the chair for balance. The house was deathly quiet, as if it had finished playing its part and was waiting for the next act. I searched for my phone. Gone. Not on the table, not in my bag, not in the bedroom. I ran to the front door. Useless. The smart lock had been reprogrammed. Mason was the only one with access. I checked the drawers for spare keys. Empty. Bedroom, desk, nothing. My chest tightened. Not just my phone, my wallet, bank cards, even my passport were missing. In the kitchen, a sticky note was taped to the fridge. Mason's handwriting. Let me handle it. I stepped back as if the words could strike me. Handle what? Me? I whispered, touching my swollen cheek. You hit me? And now you're handling it? I tore through the house, every room hollow and still. My closet had been rifled through. My best dresses were missing, so was my small cream-colored suitcase. He hadn't just hit me, he was erasing me. I stood in the darkness, phoneless, no one to call, nowhere to go. Alone, in every sense of the word. My eyes caught a photo face down on a shelf. I picked it up. It was from our first picnic. His arm around me, both of us smiling like nothing could touch us. But now, there was something odd, scribbled across the bottom in fresh black ink. You don't belong here. I dropped it like it burned. There was no doubt he was trying to push me out. Completely. I backed into the wall and slid to the floor, knees to chest. I didn't even know when the tears started. But they kept coming, hot, sharp. I didn't know what was really happening. I only knew one thing. If I didn't leave soon, I might never get another chance. I don't remember how long I stayed on the floor, but when I stood, the sky outside was ash gray. Night had fallen fast, just like the pit in my stomach, empty, chaotic, and cold to the bone. I searched again, not for answers but an exit. My phone was gone, keys too. The door locked by a digital system Mason controlled. I couldn't open it from the inside without his phone. Desperately I tried every window. Living room, sealed. Bedroom, barred. Office, screwed shut. But in the laundry room, one small window cracked open. My hands shook as I turned the handle. It creaked open, letting in the icy night air. I breathed deeply, like the outside world was the only freedom left to touch. Back in the bedroom, I grabbed a few clothes, shoved them into an old backpack. I had no cards, no ID, but I kept emergency cash hidden in my vanity. I stuffed it into the bag along with my passport, still tucked behind the romance novels Mason never touched. I glanced at the wedding photo again. I flipped it over. Those words stared back like a scar. You don't belong here. Maybe Mason wrote it in anger. Maybe someone else did. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay another night. I threw on a coat, pulled up my hood, and opened the laundry window. I pushed the backpack through, then slid out. The windowsill scraped my ribs, my shirt tore. But I didn't stop. When my feet hit the ground, the cold shot up my spine. I looked back at the house, once called home, now just a shell of shattered memories and fear. I slipped through the fence and followed the narrow path behind the garden. The alley to the main road was pitch black. Only crickets echoed in the distance. I walked fast, fists clenched around my bag, gripping the last piece of safety I had. I didn't have my car. Mason had taken my sedan's keys last week, saying it needed service. I hadn't thought twice. Now I saw it for what it was. A trap. I walked over an hour, slipping through dark neighborhoods, avoiding every light, every glance. Every distant car horn made me flinch. Finally, when my legs nearly gave out, I reached the apartment complex where Leah lived. My best friend since college. One of the few people who'd seen behind the mask I wore in my marriage. I rang the bell 3 times, no answer. I was about to press again when the door opened. Leah stood there in pajamas, hair a mess, eyes bleary. But when she saw me, my bruised face, swollen eyes, wrinkled coat, panic written all over, she didn't ask a thing. She just pulled me into a hug. I collapsed into her arms, trembling. I didn't know where else to go. She held me tighter. You came to the right place, Haley. Come in. I've got you. I stepped into the warm apartment and slammed the door shut behind me. The sound of the lock clicking was like a lifeline. I had just escaped a nightmare, but what I didn't know yet was this. It was only the beginning. Behind that door, Mason had probably already discovered I was gone. Leah made me a cup of chamomile tea and set it on the table, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I hadn't even told her everything yet, but the look on her face said it all. She knew something terrible had happened. After I spilled every detail I could remember, she sat silently for a while, then said firmly, "You can't just hide forever. I think you should go back to the house, not to confront him, but to get evidence." The thought sent a chill down my spine, but it was the only logical move. I couldn't go to the police with just a slap and a gut feeling. If Mason was hiding something, I needed proof. 2 days later, around noon when Mason was usually at work, I put on a hoodie, pulled the hood low over my face, and returned with Leah to the house I once called home. She parked at the end of the street with the engine running, ready to drive at a moment's notice. I carried my old key, Mason hadn't changed the locks yet, and slipped in through the back door. Everything inside was exactly how I left it, the couch neatly aligned, the kitchen spotless, like a show home. But the air was different. Colder, sharper, like the walls themselves were holding secrets. I went straight to the office, the room Mason had always forbidden me to enter. The door was unlocked. For a second, I wondered if he'd just assumed I'd never have the courage to return. The desk was too perfectly organized, but in the bottom drawer I found a folder labeled Private. I opened it, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Dozens of contracts with obscure satellite companies I'd never heard of. Mason's signature appeared at the bottom of each one, alongside another woman's, not mine. Many were related to asset transfers, and in red pen, repeated notes read, "Separate from wife. Do not co-sign." I kept flipping. Bank statements printed from accounts I never knew existed showed steady wire transfers overseas, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of the accounts was in my name. I stood frozen. How? I had never opened any account outside our local bank. I had never signed a single document. I steadied my breath and began taking photos of each page. At the bottom of the drawer was a thick envelope, unsealed. Inside were photos of me, taken from a distance, carrying groceries, sitting alone at the park, entering a clinic. Each one labeled in red ink with the date, but the one that made my blood run cold was marked on the back, "Under surveillance. Awaiting order to destroy." I bit down hard to hold back a sob. This wasn't just marital coldness, this was a setup, and I was the target. The sound of the front door unlocking froze me in place. Mason was home. I shoved everything back into place and rushed for the back door. But just as I turned, I turned around, heart pounding. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice darkening as he saw the open drawer. "I came to get my things." "And decided to rummage through my office while you were at it?" I stood firm. "I know what you're doing, Mason. The accounts, the photos, the fake contracts, everything. I'm not as clueless as you think." A sly smile curved his lips. "You think you understand all this? You married me to legitimize your laundering, didn't you? A clean name, no record, a college degree, a perfect front." He crossed his arms, no longer pretending. "I needed someone to open accounts, someone no one would suspect. You were perfect, and you didn't even know it." I stepped back, gasping for air. "But now I know," I said, voice trembling, "and I won't stay silent." He moved toward me, eyes ice cold. "Where do you think you'll go with that info? You think anyone will believe a runaway wife with no official proof accusing her husband of crimes?" I bit my lip. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll make sure they have no choice but to investigate." Right then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Leah. I stepped back again, clutching the phone tight. "Goodbye, Mason," I said, turning toward the back door. Behind me, his voice boomed, "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Haley." But I didn't stop. This time, I wasn't just running to escape. I was running to fight. And I swore I wouldn't stop until the truth came out. I gasped for breath as I pushed through the back door and sprinted into the fading sunlight. Shadows stretched long across the lawn, but my heartbeat was a roar in my ears. I leapt over the low wooden fence, never looking back. I didn't want to know if Mason was chasing me. I just knew I had to keep going. Leah's car was parked a few houses away, engine still running. She threw open the door the moment she saw me. "Get in!" I dove into the passenger seat, barely pulling the door shut before she hit the gas. The tires screeched, leaving a trail of smoke. I bent over, clutching my jacket pocket where I'd hidden the USB drive with everything I copied from Mason's office. "Are you okay?" Leah asked, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. "I'm fine, but he knows I saw everything." She gritted her teeth. "Damn it. Do you think he'll come after you?" I shook my head, throat tight. "I don't know, but that look in his eyes." "Leah, I've never seen him like that. Cold. Ruthless. Like I was just a problem he needed to eliminate." She didn't speak. Just hit the gas harder and turned down a side road out of the neighborhood. We didn't go back to her apartment. We couldn't. Not after I saw my name on those secret bank accounts, next to red notes that said "separate wife," like I was just a disposable piece. We stopped at a convenience store outside town, bought a burner phone, and rented a cheap roadside motel. The room was shabby, the walls stained, the single window taped shut, but at least here no one knew who we were. I sat on the bed, yellow light casting shadows on my face in the mirror, my cheek still bruised, dark circles under my eyes from too many sleepless nights. But in my reflection, the fear was gone. What remained was determination. "We need someone trustworthy to handle this," I said, pointing to the USB drive on the table. Leah nodded. "I know someone. Ethan. He's an old college friend, works for an independent paper in San Francisco. No corporate strings, no political ties. If anyone can get this out, it's him." I hesitated, then nodded. "Call him. As soon as possible." While Leah made the call, I double-checked the USB. Every file I'd photographed, every contract I copied, every chilling surveillance photo marked destroy, still intact. I plugged it into her laptop to verify. But the moment it opened, a chat window popped up. A new message from an unknown email address. "I know what you took." Attached was a photo. I opened it. It was a picture of me and Leah, taken from behind a car as we were driving away from Mason's house. The angle was blurry but unmistakable. Someone had followed us. "Leah," I shouted, hands shaking, "he knows where we are." She spun around, saw the photo on the screen, her face went pale. "We have to leave, now." I shut the laptop, yanked out the USB and tucked it into my bra. Somewhere it wouldn't fall. We packed in under 2 minutes. Leah didn't even ask for the deposit back. As she locked the door, she muttered, "Survive now, money later." We jumped into the car and turned north, toward San Francisco. I didn't know what traps lay ahead, but I knew one thing. If Mason could track us this far, he wasn't alone. And whatever power was backing him, it was bigger than I'd ever imagined. As the city lights faded behind us, I turned to Leah. "I won't stop until he pays. Not just for me, but for the others who might be next." She squeezed my hand gently. "And I won't let you fight this alone." The car sped through the night, leaving behind a life of betrayal and beginning a journey with no clear end. But I knew this was the first step toward reclaiming the truth. We arrived in San Francisco at 4 a.m. after nearly 8 straight hours on the road. Leah booked a small hotel near the downtown area, where the constant flow of tourists would help us blend in. All I could think about was getting what I had into the hands of someone with enough power to act, and enough independence not to be bought off. Leah handed me a slip of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. "This is Ethan's cousin. His name's Detective Carl Bennett. He works in the Financial Crimes Division of the San Francisco PD. He's not connected to anyone in Mason's circle. Ethan says you can trust him." I nodded and pulled out the burner phone to dial. "Detective Bennett speaking." "Hello? This is Haley Brooks. I have critical information about a money laundering operation tied to the Whitmore family in Santa Barbara. I have original evidence, but I'm being watched." There was a pause before he answered. "Where are you?" "In San Francisco. I can't say the hotel name over the phone. But I can meet you in a public place this morning. Text me the location. I'll come alone." I hung up, still on edge, but at least it was a step forward. After texting him the address of a cafe near the pier, Leah and I changed clothes, put on sunglasses and baseball caps, and left the hotel. Even in a crowd, I felt like eyes were on us, like a shadow trailing just behind, gaining with every step. Detective Bennett arrived right on time. He was a solid-built man in his 50s with deep-set eyes, and the wary look of someone used to dealing with cases no one else wanted. I handed him the USB and the photos of the contracts, bank statements, and account records. He skimmed a few files, then nodded slowly. "You're not just holding on to a laundering case. This could be the start of a financial crime network that's been running for years." I clenched my fists. I didn't realize it was this serious, but I know they won't stop unless they're exposed. He looked at me carefully. "I'll take this to the financial task force, but if you want it done right, you'll need to stay involved. Are you ready for that?" I nodded. After the meeting, Leah made a suggestion that gave me pause. "Reach out to Maria. Eleanor Whitmore's longtime assistant. She was the only one in that family who had ever shown me even a hint of kindness." "I think she knows more than she lets on," Leah said. "If anyone can help you understand what they're really doing, it's her." I found Maria's number in an old email and typed out a message. "Maria, I know this is sensitive, but I'm in danger. If you know anything, please tell me." I didn't expect a reply, but within an hour one came. "I've been waiting for this message. Meet me at Bellamy's Tea Room, 5 p.m. When I arrived, I barely recognized her. Maria looked gaunt, her eyes filled with worry. We sat at a back corner table. She kept glancing around before she finally spoke. "Do you know about Operation Exodus?" she asked. Shook my head. "There's a plan to move all of the Whitmore's dirty assets offshore in the next 6 days. They're using a chain of shell companies, hiding the transfers under outsiders' names." "Outsiders?" I frowned. Maria looked at me and nodded. "You're one of them." The floor dropped out from under me. "You're not just the name on the account. They plan to use you as the scapegoat. If anything goes wrong, all the evidence points to you." I froze. The puzzle pieces snapped into place. Why Mason married me so fast. Why I was kept out of all financial decisions. Why I always felt watched. Maria pulled a thick envelope from her bag and pressed it into my hands. Inside is a breakdown of the money trail. Company names, photos of documents I secretly copied. "Give it to someone you trust, then get out of this city, now." "What about you?" I asked, my voice tight. She gave a sad smile. "I've stayed too long. It's time for me to get out too." I clutched the envelope to my chest. Inside was the key to justice, but also the reason my life was now in danger every second. When I got back to the car, Leah was waiting. "Did you get anything?" she asked. I looked at her, my eyes no longer trembling. "Yes. More than we imagined." That morning, I stared into the mirror, smoothing down my hair, and paused at the top button of my blouse. Beneath the fabric, a tiny audio recorder was already clipped, provided by Detective Bennett himself. On the outside, I looked like a wife trying to mend a broken marriage. But inside, I knew I was stepping into the most dangerous game of my life. The plan was simple, at least on paper. I would meet Mason at a public cafe and say I wanted to explain. That I regretted running, that we could talk like adults. A performance. A trap. And as expected, Mason took the bait. "Fine. I have a few things to say too," he replied with a chilling smiley face. I chose a cafe near the park where Bennett's surveillance team could position easily. When Mason walked in, crisp white shirt, charming smile like the day we met, my palms were drenched in sweat. But I smiled, nodded slightly. The performance began. We sat at a window corner table. I shared meaningless small talk, pretending to be confused, fragile, and hoping to fix things. Mason listened, narrowing his eyes when I apologized for running away. "You're not mad?" I whispered, leaning in. He took a sip of coffee and smiled. "No, I just want you to understand. Running is pointless." I feigned confusion. "I don't understand." "You think you can disappear and start over?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Did you forget what you got yourself into?" I said nothing, letting him continue. Just like Bennett predicted, Mason's ego overpowered his caution. "Operation Vesper," he blurted, the actual code name of the laundering scheme Maria mentioned. "You think I chose you for love? No, Haley. You were an asset, a worthy investment." My heart clenched. But I couldn't react. I had to let him keep going. "We needed a clean face. A name no one would question, a smart, obedient girl with no strings. You were perfect. Until you started asking questions. And if I keep asking, I said slowly, eyes fixed on his. Then you become a problem that needs to be dealt with, Mason replied, his smile vanishing. Just like everyone else who's crossed my family. The air turned heavy. I subtly shifted my hand, a signal to Bennett's team that the moment was near. What are you going to do to me, Mason? I asked, finally letting fear into my voice. He gave a cold smirk and leaned in. Room 405. Arlington Hotel, let's talk in private. One last time. I froze. That wasn't part of the plan. But if I refused, he'd suspect. If I accepted, I'd walk into the lion's den. I nodded. Room 485 sat at the end of a long hallway with red carpet. I stood before the door, heart racing, and whispered into my mic. I'm going in, be ready. The door opened. Mason stood there, his face stripped of all charm. Get in, he said, locking the door behind me. The room was eerily quiet. I stepped in, trying to keep my distance, but Mason said nothing. He walked slowly toward me, eyes narrowing at my collar. What are you wearing? He asked, then without waiting, yanked at my neckline. Sorry, I stepped back. Why'd you come here, Haley? Not to patch things up, you think I'm stupid? I trembled. His voice grew darker, more threatening. Who's helping you, Maria? The cops? Or that blonde friend of yours? I swallowed hard. You won't get away with this, Mason. They know. He laughed, a sharp, knife-like sound. I know you're recording, but do you really think you can outsmart me? I'll erase every trace, like you never existed. Then suddenly, he grabbed my wrist and yanked hard, slamming me into the wall. I warned you, Haley. Right then. Freeze, police. The door burst open, multiple agents stormed in with shouts. Mason let me go, raising his hands as 4 guns aimed straight at him. Detective Bennett stepped forward and signaled for the officer to cuff him. Mason Whitmore, you are under arrest for fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to cause harm, and threatening another person's life. I sank to the floor, covering my face as tears poured out, not from pain but from the overwhelming relief of escaping a nightmare that had gone on for far too long. 3 weeks after Mason's arrest, I was relocated to a safe apartment in Oakland through the Witness Protection Program. Detective Bennett made it clear. This case wasn't just about laundering money. It was part of a shadowy financial network that had spanned nearly a decade, involving high-profile figures in California's business and real estate circles. The fact that I survived and brought forward the evidence had caused the entire structure to begin unraveling. Mason was indicted on more than 10 charges, including laundering, endangerment, and using stolen identities to manipulate financial systems. His mother, Eleanor Whitmore, was arrested the following week as she attempted to flee the country with a fake passport. Headlines were everywhere. Faces once praised at charity galas and investment summits were now tied to words like corruption and massive fraud. I didn't watch the news. Leah did that for me. She stayed with me through every testimony, every relocation, and every night I jolted awake from nightmares. We rented a small 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the bay, not far from the university I once attended. One sunny afternoon, Leah placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "It's time you lived for yourself now." I returned to university the following spring. I re-enrolled in environmental science, but this time, with a heart that had been broken and rebuilt. I wasn't chasing the ideal of the perfect wife or struggling to be worthy of love. I was learning because I wanted to understand, because I wanted to contribute to something that truly mattered. At first I was nervous walking into class, afraid someone would recognize me, whisper, or speculate. But no one did. I was just another student, quiet, focused, determined. And I realized, freedom doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be real. Every weekend I visited the local women's center. I didn't tell them I'd been in witness protection. I didn't mention Mason or Eleanor. I just sat, listened, and shared bits of my story. One time a young woman said, "I thought I was the only one who had been fooled like that." I smiled, squeezed her hand, and said, "You're not alone." It didn't erase the pain, but it helped me reclaim my narrative. I wasn't a victim swept away in someone else's storm. I was a survivor. I was the storyteller. And I told my story so others would know they could get out too. My lawyer finalized the divorce that summer. In addition to dividing assets, we petitioned the court to void all accounts Mason had created under my name. The process took nearly 3 months, but in the end I severed every legal tie to that past. I walked out of the courthouse that day in a simple dress, the wind brushing through my hair, and felt lighter than I had in years. One day, after a group session at the center, a girl around 17 lingered behind. She looked at me quietly and asked, "Were you scared?" I smiled. "Of course, but if you wait until you're not afraid to start, you may never start at all." She nodded, then held my hand tight. That night, I stood on the balcony of our apartment, watching distant lights shimmer on the water. Leah brought out 2 mugs of hot cocoa, just like she had back when we were on the run. "I'm proud of you," she said. I turned to her and didn't say a word, but my eyes said everything. I had once been trapped in a marriage built on lies, controlled, monitored, and nearly framed for crimes I didn't commit. But I had stood up, spoken out, and, most importantly, I had survived. Graduation took place on a sunny afternoon in May. The California sky was impossibly blue, as if the universe itself was celebrating with me, a woman who once thought her life was over. Now standing strong in a deep blue gown and square cap, waiting to hear her name. When the announcer called, "Haley Brooks, Master of Environmental Science," I walked across the stage, heart pounding. From the crowd, Leah leapt to her feet and whistled, loud enough to turn heads. I didn't care. She'd always been the loudest when I accomplished something. And today was, without a doubt, the proudest day of my life. As I stepped down, I saw a hand waving from the back row. I recognized them instantly, even after all these years. My mother, father, and sister Emily, who had flown in from Sao Paulo just to be there for this moment. I hadn't contacted my family during the investigation. I feared putting them at risk. I feared my mother's reaction when she learned her daughter had been abused and nearly framed in a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. But when I called her after the trial ended, all she said was, "You're alive," and that's all I ever prayed for. Now, as she held me tight outside the campus gates, her hand trembling as it brushed my cheek, just to make sure I was real, I understood that nothing was stronger than true family. We had a small party by the beach. Leah brought cake and my dad grilled meat just like he did when I was a kid. No fancy guests, no loud music, just the ocean, laughter, and sunshine painting memories in gold. At sunset, I sat alone on the sand, toes in the cold water. I pulled an old photo from my pocket. My wedding photo with Mason. For years I couldn't bear to look at it, but today I could. In the picture I was smiling, a hopeful, innocent smile. I didn't hate that girl. She believed in goodness, she loved deeply. And even after all the hurt, she didn't let bitterness define her. I tore the photo in half and tossed the pieces into the waves. Not for revenge, but for release. From a distance, Emily called me back to the celebration. I smiled, stood up, brushed off the sand, and walked toward the people who loved me for real. 2 months later, I accepted a position at a nonprofit focused on restoring coastal ecosystems. The job wasn't flashy and the pay wasn't high, but every morning I woke up feeling fulfilled. I used my knowledge to heal the environment, just as I had healed myself. Once a month, I still visited the Women's Center. Now I led the discussions. I never named names. I never mentioned Mason, Eleanor, or how long the trial lasted. I only spoke about a woman who once believed there was no way out, but who eventually found the light. After one session, an older woman approached me, placed her hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "You've saved more people than you know." I turned away to hide a tear. This time not from pain, but from knowing I had finally done something that mattered. That night, I sat in our cozy living room, golden light spilling across the wall while Leah arranged flowers by the window. I opened a fresh journal and wrote the first line. Once, I was bound by a loveless marriage and a past full of shadows, but today, I am not just a survivor. I am free. I am me. As I put the pen down, I knew my journey wasn't over, but this time I was the one steering. And no matter which way the wind blew, I would keep going, Because I had reclaimed the most precious thing life ever took from me: myself. Haley's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the past, it is possible to rise and rewrite your future. From betrayal, control, and threats, Haley bravely uncovered the truth, reclaimed her freedom, and built a life full of purpose. She didn't just heal, she became a light for others. Her journey shows that true strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from facing it and choosing to live boldly. What do you think about Haley's journey? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, emotional stories about family and resilience.